You're listening to The Jan Price Show, and my guest today is film composer Dominic Lewis. Welcome, Dominic.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
It's nice to have you on the show. I'm very excited to talk to you. You are the film composer for Peter Rabbit, and I must tell you that it's not a movie I necessarily would have gone to since I don't have any young children around. But since I was going to interview you, I took my two closest friends, and we went, and we absolutely loved this movie. It was a lot of a good adult humor in it, but we paid really good attention to the music. And the music really was so, it really moved everything along, and it was fun and different. And so we want to really get into the process of how it always amazes me how one composes music for a movie. So what is your process?
I mean, it's very different depending on the film. For this movie in particular, it was kind of difficult because Will Gluck, the director, he doesn't or hasn't really used film composers in the past, and he tends to rely very much on songs. So this process was very different because I think at the beginning I approached it as I would any other movie, which is, have the meeting, go home, sit at the piano, find out what my theme is, explore, which is what I did with this, because it's funny, I had to kind of demo for the film. There was no one else in the running, but I had to kind of prove that I was the guy for the job. So Will gave me the 2D flashback scene at the beginning of the film, which is, where all the Beatrix Potter illustrations are happening, and we kind of get up to date with where Peter is and what's happened with his family. So that was kind of like my audition, if you will. And so I had the meeting, we talked about it, I went home, I started figuring out what the theme should be. And I approached it as I would any other animated film. I figured out what my theme would be, and then I went to my computer and I started orchestrating out and writing the picture. And that's what got me the gig. That, that went great, and, that sealed the deal for me. But unfortunately for me, that was kind of the only really traditional moment in the film. And the rest of the journey started from that point, and the different process started from that point. And that was trying to tap into how to get Will to come around to film music and the way that film composers can tell story. So my first sort of notch in the process was to come at it from a song point of view. And by that I mean start with more song-based elements like drums and drum kit and bass and guitar and pianos and Hammond organs and things like that. It was, I had a lot of misses at the beginning because Will and I were trying to figure each other out. And also on top of that, Will was doing family and friends meetings every week. It felt like every few days, but it was every week. So I wasn't really able to get any steam up. I wasn't able to get any momentum with trying to find the sound of this film. Because right from the very beginning, Will said to me, I want it big, I want it British, I want it to be something that no one could say it's any other film. It has to have that identity of when people hear this music, they go, that's Peter Rabbit. And you can't really do that in the space of like 4 days. In between family and friends screening, and obviously, that was a completely different process for me to have to deal with like constant turnover of music and not really getting a chance to kind of dig my teeth in and explore and do what I normally do. So in the end, after like 3 weeks, I said to Will, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I really need some time to go away and figure this out because you want something different. You don't, and he didn't like we use a lot of samples, which is basically pre-recorded instruments and then put into a format that I can just play on a keyboard. So I can play any instrument I want on a keyboard. And he cannot stand that because they do sound a bit fake. They don't sound like the real thing. So on top of all of that, I had to play everything. I had to, which is great, but that takes time. I had to play everything, mix everything for every demo that I sent. So jumping back a little bit, I said to him, listen, I need a couple of weeks to go away and figure this out because this isn't your average process. And he said, sure, fine. We're not doing any more family and friends. You go away. You figure it out. So I basically went into the studio. I had my main theme, which I'd come up with and, got me the gig. That was done, but it wasn't going to get me through the film. So I had to come up with new ideas, new riffs and new themes for other characters. But that kind of happened down the line. This is more about Sonics and what I was trying to achieve and trying to get and bring Will into the world of film composing. So I just got in the studio really and started playing, which I hadn't done for such a long time, playing guitar and drums and all those band instruments, which I feel like I hadn't really done since I was a kid properly in that environment. And it was really fun. I started coming up with all this kind of cool material that a lot of it hasn't gone in the movie, but it created those stepping stones for me to get to a place where we wanted to be. So I wrote 3 songs, if you will, 3 tracks, with loads of different stuff in it. And then the 2 weeks was up, and I sent it off to Will, and I didn't hear anything for a couple of days. So I was getting a bit nervous, and another day went past, oh, am I fired? But he eventually emailed me back and said, number 2 is the sound of the movie. I think you cracked it. I love the theme that's in there. And it was this kind of very mischievous, jaunty little thing that had a little bit of edge to it, which was cool. So then I thought, great, this is awesome. I can start moving through the film. I can start, going about my business. That's my normal process of scoring the movie. But little did I know there was another obstacle, another bump in the road, which is that this song-based stuff, was not. It wasn't going to get me through the movie because it wasn't big enough. It wasn't epic enough. It didn't conjure up what one needed when looking at the vast countryside of England and the action towards the end of the film. So I kind of had to rethink my approach and think, okay, well, does he want orchestra in this? Because previously I'd done orchestral stuff and he'd be like, no, it's too orchestral. And I think that was because he wasn't used to it and he was maybe a bit scared of it. Because it conjures up those ideas of film composing and more sort of generic Hollywood stuff, which he's very much against. So I thought, okay, well, what if I blend it in a way that I keep the song's style, the band instruments, the band basses, and then just whack a massive orchestra on top of it to give it that big British feel. And the stuff that I'd done with the band was very much influenced, was British influence. I drew from my love of the Beatles and the Smiths and the Jam and all those iconic British bands because I did want to keep it British. And then obviously putting the massive orchestra on top of it, that had to be very evocative of British countryside and British classical music, and I really wanted to keep that traditional element. So Will came in for a meeting. He'd been in Australia cutting for about a week, 10 days, and I'd done the opening of the film, which went back and forth so many times. It used to be a song, I think it was Iggy Pop at one point, and it was Blur, and then it was, I tried a score piece that didn't work, and then they went back to Blur, and it just went through so many iterations. But whilst Will was in Australia, it gave me time to really get down and dirty with it and really figure out what it needed to be. So I put in my bandy elements. My theme was evolving at that point into somewhere that I was really liking. The chords were getting to a place that I was really liking. And then along came the massive orchestra, and suddenly stuff started clicking for me. And I was really thinking that, this is really working with picture. And it was the first time I'd actually gone, this is working. Rather than I think this is working. I'm a little bit out of my depth in terms of, what I think Will wants. I'm not sure. And it was a bit kind of all over the place. But when I was writing that opening at that point, I was like, I think this is it. I think I've cracked it. Now, I've been in that position before, and, I've been very wrong, and the director hates it. But luckily, Will came in for a meeting. He saw that I was doing the opening. He's like, oh, no, I've cut this because it's too long. It's not working. So, okay, we'll just watch it anyway, see what you think. So he watched it, and he loved it. He thought, that really works. Maybe I shouldn't have cut it. That really works. which was great, and that was a big win, and it meant that we could move forward. I mean, he ended up cutting so much more from that opening, but that was the point. I think it was like a month in. That was the point that going back to the question. I know I've rabbited on Cutipon for so long, but I mean that was the point where the process of the rest of the scoring could start. So I'd gone through like four other ways of doing it and not come up trumps. But now, at that point, he listened to the opening, he had a sound, and he thought, okay, this is Peter Rabbit. This is band plus orchestra. It's old traditional plus new. We can move forward with this. And you know, it was the first time he walked out of my studio after a meeting with a smile on his face, and he really felt like, you know, he was in my head. So yeah, this process was tricky to kind of wrestle to the ground and get to grips with it, but it ended up being really cool. We got to a really great place.
It turned out wonderfully. We're going to go for a commercial break, and before we go into the break, we're going to play a clip, a sound clip from the movie Peter Rabbit. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like The Jan Price Show on Facebook and check out thejanpriceshow.com.
The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled with luxury loungers in every auditorium. Oversized plush recliners are electric-powered reclining seats with extendable footrests, cup holders, and snack tables. Guaranteed comfort with all reserved seating. Reserve the best seat in town online at Cinemark.com or download the Cinemark app today. The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled. Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right, it's Mr. Sandless, the no sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
We are back, and my guest today is film composer Dominic Lewis, and we're talking about his scoring the new movie Peter Rabbit. So you said the director Will, he had never worked with a composer before on his other films? Is that what you said?
I mean, he'd worked, I think he worked with a composer on Fired Up, and I'm not quite sure what happened, but from that point on, he decided not to use composers.
Interesting.
With his other movies, Easy A and Friends with Benefits, and then, of course, he did the remake of Annie, which already had songs in it, so he used Greg Kirsten, the amazing producer, to kind of wrangle that new idea of Annie. So yeah, he hasn't really used film composers, and I think the one experience he did have kind of put him off. So it was a challenge to bring him back to the ways of film scoring, and I feel very kind of honored is the wrong word, but I've just been in London. I went to the premiere of Peter Rabbit in London, and I got to chat to Will beforehand, and he was like, you've converted me. I now know what score can do, and in the next one, I won't be using so many needle drops, and I'll be trusting, the process of score. And it felt really great that someone who has, had kind of a hate relationship with film music and even makes jokes about it in Friends with Benefits, of, how much he doesn't like it, that I happen to be the guy that turned him back onto, what it can do and how it can help a film. So it feels kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. It should. It really should. And maybe you'll collaborate again on his next movie.
I hope so, yeah. No, it was really fun. And he's so smart and funny. As you said, you went with your friends and you didn't go with any kids. And the kids love it, but there is stuff in there for the adults as well. The jokes are really well thought out.
They are. They really are. I mean, we laughed harder than the kids did, I think, when we went to see it, for sure. How was it received in London when you went to the London premiere?
Great. I mean, the theatre I was in for the premiere, all the kids loved it, all the adults loved it. I think critically, you're always going to come up against a bit of a wall because it's one of those books that's just, it's ingrained in people's childhoods and it's beloved by so many people. So I think if you do anything new with it, or if you don't, if Will had kept it completely, true to Beatrix Potter and, in the early 1900s, people were, it was a period piece with, very cheesy English countryside accents. I think he would have come up against, critic bashing also. So I think he did something really cool. And I think he did stay true to it. But of course, I think some of the English critics and American, I think if any bad review of the movie has been that, it's not like the book. But, I think everyone I've spoken to, people that are being kind to me because they're from my family and friends, and just the general public have said that we really like the film. So I think it's been received really well. It's just that there's that, I never listen to critics anymore anyway.
Oh, I don't either. I actually do movie reviews myself, but I don't. Years ago, when I studied film, the professor said, don't read reviews. So I don't. And I don't like to even look at the Rotten Tomatoes because I generally don't agree with them. But I will read reviews after I see the movie just to see what they thought of it. And most of the times I don't agree with them. Sometimes I do. But it's interesting. What I always like to look at are what the fans have to say. So in my little movie reviews, my 1 minute movie reviews that I do on radio, it's just real quick as far as, just sort of going from the point of view of the audience, not as a critic. I think critics think they need to criticize rather than praise sometimes.
I do too. I think it's, I think this whole era of Rotten Tomatoes as well is not upsetting is the wrong word, but I feel like movies are not given a chance based on what, a handful of critics have thought about this film. There's been plenty of movies that, have a 33 or whatever it is, and, whatever, it looks good. It's got people I want in it. I like the trailer. I'm going to watch it, and I end up liking it. And the 33% often, and a lot of my friends, a lot of my family won't, if it's not above a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes, they won't watch it. And I think that's
really
such a shame.
Wow, that is a shame. I agree with you. I think there's a lot of really good movies that, for whatever reason, get a low score, and you go, well, this was just, it was entertaining. It was, when you go to I've said this very often on this show, but when you go to the movies, you want to be moved in some way, whatever it is. So like going to see Peter Rabbit, you laughed. It was cute. It was fun. You had a good, it was a fun movie. And so you walk out of the theater with a smile on your face. So you're moved. But if you go to a movie and you go, well, that was okay. And it didn't, and a lot of times they're highly rated movies, by Rotten Tomatoes. And I go, really? What did they see in that movie that I missed or whatever? So
I know.
I don't know. I think they become, because they have to go see so many movies, they maybe just become jaded, and they're looking for something always unique and different, which we all are, I believe. But sometimes when they're given that, they decide it's not that good. I don't know. I mean, it's so subjective.
Funny, I was having this conversation with my friend last night over dinner, and very similar conversation. I think it was about critics and all that kind of stuff, and we weren't agreeing on certain films and if they were good or not. But I think for me personally, the art of cinema is exactly that. It's not just art; it's the art of cinema. It's the art of film, and that can mean so many different things. You know, it doesn't have to be, in the world of film, as you were saying, there's so many different ways that a movie can move you, and it doesn't have to be artistically brilliant to be a good movie. And I know that's quite, that's kind of a controversial statement maybe to some people, but I don't think it does. I think if it's entertaining you in a way that cinema and movies and TV have evolved, then why does it necessarily have to be a work of art? And I think critics kind of have that sort of little devil on their shoulder, which makes them review things probably harsher than they should. But that's just my opinion.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, there were a couple of the films that were nominated for Oscars this year that, to me, were kind of underwhelming. I'm not going to say what they were.
That was what we were talking. We were talking about a specific movie that I felt very underwhelmed by, that my friend absolutely loved. So we would discuss. I won't mention the movie, but
no, I won't either. I won't. Probably maybe it could be the same one. I don't know.
But yeah, we were. Yeah, and that's what's great about it. Everyone's got a different opinion. So why, if you have a different opinion to your friend of a movie, then why go on Rotten Tomatoes and go, oh, well, these critics have told me that it's not very good. But what if you have a different opinion? Go find out for yourself.
Yeah,
Don't rely on a website that either has a tomato or a splat next to it to make your mind up about a film. I just think that's ridiculous.
I agree. I totally agree. And, that's what I said about the fans, because there's usually a fan, if you go to the trailer in the movie, the audience, they'll go the fan reviews, and they'll go, I don't know what the critics were saying, why they were saying this wasn't good. And they'll say it. And usually I'm more in agreement with them about the movie.
I agree.
Ultimately, yeah, about what they have to say. So, well, tell us a little bit about your background, because you have quite an interesting background, and how you got to become a film composer.
Yeah, well, I think I started music from such an early age. I was 3 when I started the cello.
Wow, that's very young.
Very young. And a lot of people are always like, how did you play it? Isn't that too big? But no, they do smaller cellos. So I had a little cello when I was 3. My dad is a cellist. My mum is a singer. I was raised in music all the time, all day, every day. So I guess I didn't really have a choice, and not through them being Tiger parents. It's just it felt like me that I needed to be in music. And my journey went from being obsessed with the cello and wanting to be like my dad, and then kind of growing up a bit and sort of finding the guitar, teaching myself that, then kind of moving into I want to be a singer-songwriter, I want to be a rock star, as we all do when we're teenagers. And then from that point on, I started writing songs in my band at school, and then was sort of still listening to classical music and very heavily influenced by the Beatles and the ELO and those massive arrangements. And I kind of felt like I wanted to do that, and this band thing's I'm not getting out of it what I want. But then I started adding string arrangements, and looking into technology, and obviously because I couldn't hire orchestras to do my stuff, and I got my dad and his quartet to come in on a few things and play kind of quartet arrangements that I'd done, which was cool. And then that wasn't really doing it for me either. And I think I was about 15, and I'd always loved film music. I'd always single it out when watching films, and always been obsessed with John Williams and Jerry Goldsmith and Alan Silvestri and all the greats from an early age. But it was 15, and in England, I'm sure there's something similar in the US, but we had this thing called work experiences. When you're 15, and we have GCSEs. I don't know what the equivalent is here when you do exams when you're 15. But we have these things called GCSEs that everyone gets super stressed out about, and you do 10 subjects, and there's so much pressure, and they don't mean anything in your life. But at the time, you think they're massive. And then after that, you're kind of forced to after studying all year, then you're kind of forced at the beginning of your summer holiday to go and basically do an internship or a job somewhere. And my work experience was to hang out with Isabel Griffiths, who's an orchestral contractor in London and who my dad works for now and has played on many, many, many film scores. And I didn't really, it was really cool because she was a friend of the family. I didn't really have to do anything. I just sort of sat in the box and listened to all this amazing music. So, I mean, when I was 15, I was in on a Craig Armstrong session. I can't remember the name of the album now. He wasn't actually doing a film score, he was doing an album. But it was that thing I wanted. It was that kind of hybrid of band with massive orchestra. And then a couple of weeks later, I got to sit in on Shrek, Harry Gregson Williams' Shrek score.
Shrek, wow, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, I want to hear, we're going to, when we come, we have to take a quick break, but when I come back, let's talk about that a little bit. We'll pick up where we just left off. We're going to listen to another cut from Peter Rabbit. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook. And check out thejanpriceshow.com. The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have the desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
My guest today is film composer Dominic Lewis. And before the break, we were just starting to talk about how he got to work on Shrek. At what, age 15?
I was 15, yeah. I mean, I wasn't working on it. I was just listening.
Oh, listening. Okay.
Yeah, my dad was working on it. My dad was playing on it. But the way that all came about was that I actually went to school with Rupert Gregson Williams' stepdaughter, who is Harry's brother. And from about 15, Rupert kind of took me under his wing and started teaching me the ropes. I had become so obsessed with film music, and then he said, "Listen, my brother's over from LA recording Shrek. Why don't you go and check it out?" And I'd never been to that was my first film session. So of course I was like, yeah, I have to go. And my dad was on it, so that made it easier getting to and from the studio. But so yeah, I went along and I sat in the box, and it was just that moment where you go, wow, no, this. I've made the right decision. I do need to do this. This is what I need to do with my life. And I was sort of there, obviously, because I was, not working with Rupert, but kind of bouncing ideas off Rupert, and he would teach me stuff, and that, I'd go down to his studio, and he'd teach me about samples and writing to picture and all that kind of stuff. But being on a session and seeing it go down live was just like, oh, okay, this is definitely what I want to do. And it lit a spark in me, and that's still burning, thankfully.
That's great. And to discover that at such a young age, too.
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to do music. It was just where it was going to go. I was convinced I was going to be a songwriter and a rock star at, 12, 13, but that didn't pan out because I found film music, and it was sort of like, it's become the modern day classical music. So it was right for me, coming the background I came from, and it was this beacon that was calling to me. So from that point on, I continued hanging out with Rupert. I auditioned for the Royal Academy of Music, and I went there for 4 years, all the time staying in contact with Rupert and, sending him, doing various arrangements for things, and I would sing for him on TV shows and things like that. And just being involved, And I was actually lucky that I lived next to a TV composer, a guy called Paul Pritchard. And I'd go and hang out with him as well. And I was doing kind of bits and bobs of singing as well on commercials and TV shows and stuff like that from like 8. So it just felt like 15 was the culmination of, the yellow brick road was now finished and I could start walking it. I went to the academy and I studied composition, not film composition, just straight up classical contemporary composition for 2 of those years, and then years 3 and 4 I kind of moved into doing more film style stuff. And I just kind of took from that what I could all the time, thinking I need to move to LA now. I need to go. I was done with the academy after about 2 years, but I stuck it out, and I'm glad I did because I just absorbed all I could. I had a fantastic orchestration teacher, a guy called Chris Austin, who taught me all the tricks of the trade. He taught me everything he knew, and he was just so warm and giving, and just like wanted me to succeed. Saw the passion in me, how much I loved it, and I think that matched him really. I mean, he's a conductor and predominantly very much in contemporary classical music, but his real love, I think, is film music and orchestration of film music and just good orchestral music. So he saw that I loved all that stuff and really nurtured that. And then from that point, when I left college, I wanted to work for Rupert. That was the goal. He'd been mentoring me for, I don't know, what would it be now? Like almost 10 years, like 8 years or something like that, off and on. But, as I know now, there was no space for me. He was kind of full up and there was no room. He didn't need any help on the project he was doing. And that was that, really. But what he did do, he said, listen, I don't have any room for you right now, but get yourself out to LA. I'll put in a good word with Hans. That would be Hans Zimmer. And, go to remote control, see if you like it, hang out, and see what happens. So I did. I didn't have, my parents, I don't have that much money, and I didn't have money for the ticket, but I did have a cello. So I sold it for the airfare, sold my cello, and got on a plane, and never looked back, really. I didn't actually meet Hans for the first month or so. And it's so weird. Like, I always thought I'd go to remote control, work for Hans, and that would be it. But that's not how it happened. I had a couple of friends. Well, they're my dad's friends, but I became friends with them from the session world that knew John Powell really well. Went to college with him. So they were coming out for their holidays. And I went round there for dinner and started talking to John. And one of the friends, Emmeline, was bigging me up to John and said that, you need people on your movie, you should give them a chance. And that's what happened. He gave me a chance, and I think I did. It's weird, it was on Thanksgiving, I remember it vividly, because everyone who was working for him was American, so they were celebrating Thanksgiving, but he still needed stuff to be done. So I went in there on Thanksgiving Day and did like a 3-day trial over that Thanksgiving weekend holiday, and that was it. I passed the test, and I finished the movie, and that was How to Train Your Dragon.
Oh, How to Train Your Dragon! Wow.
Yeah, pretty amazing first.
Right.
First gig.
Exactly. That is a big movie that you started on. So where did it go from there? I mean, you've worked on so many amazing movies, but where did you go from that experience? Did you work with him some more?
I did in the future. After that, he went on to do a movie called, I think it was Green Zone, which is very much just kind of him messing with electronics and sort of plowing forward on his own. So he didn't really need any help with that. So after this kind of, amazing start and sort of having to pinch myself, I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? The guy that has given me my start doesn't need me anymore. But I went back to remote control. At this point, Hans was finished with, he was doing Sherlock at the time. Hans was finished with Sherlock. So he was able to kind of meet new people and come out of his dungeon and back to the real world. So I went back to remote control when Dragons was finished and met Hans. And then, the goal was to work for Hans. And he got me on one of the rigs over there, and I was learning all of his samples and how they work and all that. And then Ramin Javadi was asked to do a save job on Clash of the Titans. And there was 3 weeks to do it. So it was a sort of all hands on deck job, really. And Hans just said, well, why don't you try this new guy? So it was like, straight back into the deep end. Three weeks to help out on Clash of the Titans. And it was me, Jeff Zanelli, a guy called Bobby Tahuri, and obviously Ramin. And I didn't mess up. So the journey continued, and then after that, I did work for Hans, and I did Rango with Hans, with Gore Verbinski, which was awesome, and that was those 2.5 months I did with Hans with the hardest to date, I think, in my career. It was so brutal. Because I think Hans saw something in me, but he really, he went to town. He really wanted to put me through the ringer and see if I could come out the other end. And, from 15, there was nothing that was going to stop me doing what I wanted to do. So there was nothing that Hans or Gore Verbinski or anyone could throw at me that would make me not continue and just pull myself up and get back on the horse and do it again. So, there was this one cue on Rango that was really, really trying, and it went through so many different versions. But in the end, I got through it, and, Hans and I still have a great relationship now. I've worked with him on other stuff. To go back to your previous question, I then from Rango worked on Kung Fu Panda 2 with both John and Hans. So it was great to then work with both of the guys that had given me my start. And I did Kung Fu Panda 2 with the both of them, and that was another massive test for me at an early age. But I got through that as well. So
I love it that your passion has carried you through, and you were going to be undaunted no matter what happened. You knew where you wanted to go. You had it. Your passion was there, and nothing was going to stop you from achieving your passion. And that's what I love. I love hearing those kinds of stories. We're going to take another quick commercial break, but before we do, we're going to listen to another cut from Peter Rabbit. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook, and check out thejanpriceshow.com.
The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled with luxury loungers in every auditorium. Oversized plush recliners are electric-powered reclining seats with extendable footrests, cup holders, and snack tables. Guaranteed comfort with all reserved seating. Reserve the best seat in town online at Cinemark.com or download the Cinemark app today. The Century Theater at Northridge Mall is newly remodeled. Tired of looking at your worn wood floors? Mr. Sandless can bring them back to life again. That's right. It's Mr. Sandless, the no sanding solution to beautiful wood floors. Mr. Sandless is clean, efficient, contains no harmful chemicals, and is certified green. Mr. Sandless refinishes all hardwoods, softwoods, engineered flooring, and laminates. Most jobs are completed in one day with no cleanup required ever, with virtually no odor, and is safe for pets and kids. No need to move out or even leave the house. Mr. Sandless is the company that invented Sandless Refinishing and is the largest floor refinishing company in the world. Over 120,000 happy customers, guaranteed adhesion, guaranteed satisfaction, and a 5-year warranty. Call Mr. Sandless today at 831-747-7476. That's 747-7476. Or MrSandless.com. That's MrSandless.com.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
My guest today is film composer Dominic Lewis. Dominic, when you are scoring a movie, you talked a little bit about scoring Peter Rabbit, and that seemed like that was a little bit different process than you normally go through. What is your process? Do you always work that closely with a director, or does a director let you go off and create what you need to create? Do you score it after you see the finished movie, or are you scoring it as the movie's being filmed? There's a lot of questions there.
No, I mean the collaboration with the director is always pretty close. I mean, some directors will be more hands-on than others. There's definitely for me, I like to collaborate. I like for them to feel involved and not just come up with a bunch of music and go, okay, that's your music. I like the fact that even if, some directors will be very versed in music and can give you, very specific notes of, oh no, I don't like the clarinet there, I don't like the trumpet there, or something like that. And some directors don't have any musical knowledge whatsoever in musical language. So that's actually another challenge, to kind of try to understand what they mean. Because sometimes there'll be instances where they'll just say, "No, I don't really like it," and it's not necessarily that they don't like the whole thing. There might just be an element in there that they're not really sure about. So it's down to me to try to figure out, what it is when they say they don't like something. Is that the whole thing? Is that a little bit of it? Mm-hmm. So it's a cool little puzzle to try and figure out. But normal, that's the process with a director changes with every movie you do, even with the same directors. I did MI5 with a guy called Barrett Narilli, who did the original there's a TV show in England called Spooks, and then they made a movie out of it, which was called MI5, The Greater Good. And then I did, and that was cool, and it was very collaborative, and somehow we did it in different countries. And then, I did a TV show called The Player with him, and it was completely different. It was much more fast-paced, and he was way more hands-off with that one and just kind of wanted music as opposed to, really getting down and, into it and giving notes. So it changes every time. Sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Oh, the second part was, do you score it after the movie is finished, or are you scoring it? Are they giving you, some of the film for you to score, and you score that particular piece for that particular segment of the film?
It changes from project to project. With TV stuff that I do, it normally is done. There may be one or two edits after the fact, but I tend to work to what they call a locked cut, which is it's finished, and there may be some visual effects missing, but essentially the timings are all locked in. Now, with something like Peter Rabbit, I got the movie in a very early stage where very little animation was finished, and it was kind of little guys in blue suits running around with, drawn drawn bunny rabbits all over the place. So I saw it from that stage and right through to the end, which was great. And it changed a lot. It got cut a lot. And that means, you know, when you're writing music all the time, that your music has to be cut too and changed, moved around. And that's kind of a tricky process because you come up with something that you think you've nailed and then the picture completely changes and you have to change it. But then other movies I've done, I've got a close to locked or locked pictures. So it depends, really. And when I did Freebird, the ending of the movie was still storyboards. And I wrote the ending of the film, which was about, over 2 scenes. So together, that would have come to about 5 minutes of music. And as it turned out, the director, Jimmy, who I'm great friends with now, liked the music so much, he made them animate to the cues, as opposed to normally that would be like, just animate it and then we'll conform the music. But luckily for me, they decided to animate to the music, which is great and very rare. So there's all different types of proceeds and ways to do it. Some directors like to bring me on at an early stage so they can really go through the process. And then there's movies like Money Monster, which is a save job, and I did in 3.5 weeks. And, you know, there's no real time to kind of explore. You just have to go with your gut and really rely on experience and the people around you to guide you. And, you know, working with Jodie was incredible, and she knew what she wanted. So therefore she was able to kind of, that vibe and aura of hers bled into everyone around her, and we just kind of knew what it needed to be. So it changes every time. I've never done anything that I've been like, oh, this feels just like whatever project it was. You know, every single time it's different, which is cool. It keeps you sane.
Right, yeah. And it makes it more interesting, too, whether you're not doing cookie cutter and all of that. But it sounds like you really need to be very flexible in what you're doing and be able to rise up to each situation. I'm hoping every composer can do that, but maybe they all can't do that. It sounds like you have that freedom and flexibility. What's the greatest lesson that you learned from Hans Zimmer?
Oh, I have to just tell one. I mean, there's so many. The greatest lesson from Hans, and I think this is really good advice for all young film composers. When you're young and you're inexperienced, which I was, the tendency is to really feel that your music is the most important thing. Because, you know, you're young, you're arrogant, you want to succeed, and, you know, you feel like you can make a difference and your music's going to be different to anyone else's. The great thing that Hans told me, and of course his music is some of the most memorable.
Yes, I love his music.
It's amazing, but he does it without compromising the film. And the reason why is because he views himself as a filmmaker and a collaborator, and that's the greatest lesson he's taught me, is that you are another filmmaker in that room. You're not the musician. You know, you're not the court jester. You are part of the team. You are making this movie with them, and you should view yourself as a filmmaker, not just a film composer. You're not just providing the music for this film. You are providing an element that is so important, but yet it's one of many of this film. So eventually coming to terms with that idea that, you know, although music is really important and can help people convey emotions sometimes that are not there and tell a story that's not there or is there, you are part of this big wheel, and everyone needs to jump on that wheel for the whole thing to get finished and to be the best it can be. And it's not a case of, you know, the movie's made and then you come on and do the music and everyone loves the music. That's not it. It was a really humbling piece of advice. Not to say that, you know, I was writing music that didn't fit the film. Right, but it was more of an approach. It was more of a mindset, knowing that you need to be doing what is right for the movie, not what's right for the soundtrack. So I mean, he's given me so much incredible advice, and just sitting in a room with him and becoming a sponge for 5 years has molded me somewhat into, and all these other guys that I've worked with have molded me into the composer that I am today. But yeah, he's a special man. Mm-hmm. the word genius gets thrown around a lot, but I really do think he is. It's because he's able to remold himself and has done so many times and changed the game so many times. And he changed film music. You know, he turned the orchestra into a guitar. He turned the orchestra into a rock band, into something that was cool and dark and just never heard of and broke rules. And, you know, that's what I mean by, like, how can I give you one example of life lessons, because the man is a walking life lesson of how to set yourself apart from everyone else in this business. He's just incredible.
He is incredible. I loved what he did with Dunkirk. I mean, it was such a, you know, the music was such an integral part of that movie. It was amazing. Well,
him and Nolan have this very special relationship.
Yes, they do.
They're like brothers.
Yeah,
they love each other, but they fight, but they get to this most groundbreaking, amazing place when they make movies together. It's quite something.
It is. It really is. And I love Christopher Nolan and anything he ever does. I think it's just usually brilliant. So, and then, you know, you get this wonderful score by Hans Zimmer usually. We're going to take a quick break. And before we do, we have another cut from Peter Rabbit. You are listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM, and like The Jan Price Show on Facebook, and check out thejanpriceshow.com. The Ozio Theater in downtown Monterey is now open every day, showing independent and foreign films. The Ozio Theater has new concession offerings, including beer, wine, hard cider, and their homemade Lush Slush. You can now schedule private event screenings for community charity events, birthdays, anniversaries, or just a fun gathering of friends. For more information, visit the Ozio Theater online at oziotheater.com.
Have you ever dreamed of doing commercials or movies? Your dream starts with a desire. And if you have the desire to do commercials and feature films, we want to know about you. We're Moco Film, one of the Genesis companies that includes VoiceJock, a major provider of TV commercial talent to TV stations throughout the nation. Registering is free. Just go to mocofilm.com and fill out the information. That's MOCOfilm.com. You'll become part of a large talent bank available to producers. Go to mocofilm.com today and start living your dream.
On Power Talk AM 1460 and FM 101.1. Streaming worldwide on iHeartRadio. Jan Price talks to the movers and shakers in the film business. The Jan Price Show.
My guest today is film composer Dominic Lewis. And Dominic, we only have like around a minute or two before we go. But and I really love this conversation. What are you working on now?
I'm finishing up Man in the High Castle Season 3. I'm just on the last episode of that right now. It dubs tomorrow. And I'm doing the end of DuckTales Season 1. And then we'll be, I think, going immediately into Season 2. And other than that, I just have a newborn baby to deal with. That's my latest project.
Well, you had a boy or a girl?
A boy, another boy. I've got two boys now, Wilder and Quincy.
How cute. How wonderful. And how old's the oldest?
He's 2.5, so he's being very testing right now.
Are you going to give him a cello?
If he wants one, I think it's one of those things. I don't want to push anything on them. I want them to be surrounded by music, but I want them to make their own choice.
That's great. That's great. Great advice. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and I look forward to having you back on the show in the future.
I would love to.
Have a great day. You've been listening to The Jan Price Show, all about movies on Power Talk 1460 and 101 FM. Like The Jan Price Show on Facebook and check out thejanpriceshow.com.